Hey guys, it's Shadow Flyer. Today I had a unique opportunity. We got to go to the Lynchburg Airport, which is pretty close by, and participate in a airport emergency drill. And so what we did is we just showed up to the airport. We were simulating a scene of an airplane crash, and I was part of a group of volunteers playing the victims of the crash. We stood around one of the hangars until everybody was ready. But this was a practice drill for a bunch of people. It wasn't just like fire department. It was the fire department. It was some of the police, EMTs, and just a lot of security people in the airport facility. And yeah, it was definitely interesting. There's a few things I definitely learned from the whole thing. If you ever get the chance to participate in a drill like this, or maybe you're actually holding a drill similar to this, there's definitely a few tips to help make this a little bit better for not just the people performing, but for the volunteers and for anybody involved, really. So the first thing is help the volunteers so that they can help you. So obviously for this, I was one of the volunteers. I was a victim in this case. And at the very beginning, they gave us little note cards. We all just drew from a pile, and each note card had an injury. That was pretty much all I would say. I think mine said chest pain. That's all it said, just chest pain. One person's abdominal pain. And some people said headache, some just said confusion. But each card had its own thing. And for us, at least, we're not medical students. We were pilots, just helping out for fun and for the experience. And so when we were playing the victims and they were getting us out and like trying to figure out what's wrong with us, and we're trying to act it out and try to get them a little experience in the situation, one of the biggest issues is that because we don't really know much of the symptoms, it was hard for us to really relay what the issue was and what problems were associated with our physical dilemma. So in this case, a specific example would, if you have the note cards, which I think the note cards was a good idea, have everybody kind of draw an injury in a way. But on the note card, I would recommend just putting like some of the symptoms down, or like more specifics on what they can do to help their role be better. Because when the volunteers and the victims don't really know what they're doing, it's hard to get a really good drill. And I think this drill went fine. There wasn't too much issue. Everybody just kind of acted out whatever they decided they want to interpret that as. But some of them, like for example, the abdominal pain, that could be a ruptured spleen, ruptured liver, or something. But if you're not a medical person, there's a good chance you don't actually know how to pretend other than grabbing your abs and going ow. So definitely writing some symptoms down would help. And a second thing I noted was that when you're practicing this and there's a whole bunch of different groups trying to participate and get experience from it, try to give everybody equal time to practice. So in our case, we had like firefighters, EMTs, and like there's another group. I don't know if they were nurses, or honestly not sure who they were. I just know they were the ones that once we were all kind of off the scene, we were supposed to be going to them for help. And one comment we got at the end was that the firefighters got to do their job and play it out in full. The EMTs did pretty much, got almost the same amount of time, but like at the end, anybody who had a later role, they got barely any time to do anything really. And so the first part, like I'm sure the firefighters had a great time getting the experience in the situation, but for everybody else, there were some groups that were kind of just almost left out. They were involved, but not to the extent that they could have been. So giving equal time to everybody kind of just helps the overall drill to just go well and be better for everybody. Third, have a good labeling system. This is very specific more towards this exact drill. But when they're getting you out, they give you labels. They give you a label, either green, yellow, or red, or black. And the whole idea was that it labels your need of assistance. So if you were green, you were pretty much able to walk away. You might have had injuries, but it wasn't severe. Yellow, you needed assistance soon, but it wasn't like probably life-threatening really. And then red was like needs immediate assistance, like could be life-threatening. And then black was meaning you're dead. But anyways, a comment we got for that was the color system itself was good, but the way we labeled people sometimes wasn't the best. So they had little like strands of almost like a non-sticky tape that they would just rip off and kind of put in your clothing. But if you don't actually tie it to something, some of it was blowing away, some of it would just fall off, and then you got people that aren't even labeled anymore, and now you're having to figure out what's their issue again. So having a better labeling system is good, and also kind of in part with that, once they got all the victims to the side, they had 3 tarps for each pretty much section of need. So they had a red, yellow, and green tarp, and you just put all the green people, you just sat on that tarp, yellow people on their tarp, and then, I mean, makes sense. However, when, like today's weather was really good. It was warm, but it was good. And in the future, it may not happen on a really sunny, nice weather day. It might happen more in a situation where it might be snowing, or it could be raining, or there could be a ton of wind, or just anything really. It's just the weather conditions aren't always as nice as they were. So in that case, if you can have any type of shelter or anything to protect them, the victims, from the elements, I mean, you're there to help them recover from the injuries they have already. So if they're having to be exposed to the elements while they're sitting there, you're not really helping their cause as much. So I think I'm on number 4. So 4th would be have speed of excellence. This was done in most of the time, but there were a few times in particular that, I mean, just watching almost from the sidelines and partly from being a victim, I just noticed that people were just walking everywhere. And some of that might be trying to just stay calm, and if you're running everywhere, you might get everybody hyped up or something. I mean, I'm not a professional in that field, so I don't know if there's maybe a reason behind it, but it just seemed like if an airplane crashes and you're trying to get all the people out and get the situation under control, it just seems like if you're having to park on a different part of the airport and you're just walking slowly over to the field, it just doesn't seem, not that you don't care, it's just that you could be doing it faster and helping in a better way. So yeah, just going a little faster and having more purpose to your walk, if nothing else. Number 5 is know the chain of command. There were a few people that said that in the drill they were confused on where the actual command post was, and part of the issue is that you may know in your group who's the commander, but if you're trying to get a whole bunch of groups together and coordinate amongst them, there has to be one command post, and if everybody doesn't know where that is, there's an issue. So we did get that cleared up and people were able to figure it out. But again, you have to know who's in charge, or else it can become chaos. You need to have good leadership, but you also need to be able to know where that leadership is. So, and finally, this is more towards if you are a victim of this incident. This isn't really how to help the drill any, but if you're ever a victim in this case it's an airplane crash, but it could potentially be in other situations as well, help yourself first. And the reason I say this is because I learned a few things while I was there, and one of the biggest things is that while they may have a few different fire trucks and they might have a decent amount of equipment, they don't necessarily have the staff to actually do it. So in our case, we were told by the fire chief that, yeah, they have a few different fire trucks and the equipment to do so, and like to put out and get everything done, but most of their workers are all volunteer, and they usually only have one, maybe two, but usually one actual firefighter on scene at a time. And so when you see that first fire truck rolling out and trying to get everything done, there's usually only one guy in there. And when there's only one guy, he can only do so much physically, and there's also a lot of things by regulation he's only allowed to do. So a more specific example is he can go with his fire truck and he can try to put out the fire with what he has, but once he does that, from what I was told, he is not actually allowed to leave like the truck to try to get people out of the plane, which almost seems like, I don't know, I feel like there could be better ways to do that, but from what I was told, he has to stay with his truck. He's not allowed to go try to evacuate the people from them. So at that point, assuming the fire's out, the airline's pilot, if they're still conscious, and all the crew, so the flight attendants, they'll be trying to get all the passengers out as quickly as they can. But in a worst case scenario, when they are unable to really do that, you have to really take care of yourself. And I know in part of the passenger briefing, they tell you about the oxygen masks and how if those are coming down and you have to use them, always put it on yourself first and then put it on a person next to you if necessary. And they say this is because if you put it on them but not yourself first and you then go unconscious, and what if they're already unconscious, then there's nothing really to do. But if you put it on yourself first, you then are able to help those around you. And it's very similar in this case. So if something happens like this and people aren't able to help you, then you need to help yourself before trying to help others. Those are my helpful tips in the situation. Hope you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.